Hello, poetry lovers. The video tonight shows the creation of a new piece I'm tentatively calling The Unfinished. Stick around to the end of the video to see the completed first draft of this new poem. This piece is another one in my Barren Woman series, which is a chapbook-length collection that explores one experience of infertility and fertility treatment. Like the other pieces in this series, this poem is short and free verse, but thematically, this piece focuses on a topic I don't discuss anywhere else in the collection, and I wanted to reflect that uniqueness and the very serious but also unusual topic in the form. There's a temptation, I think, to think of free verse as just prose chopped up into lines, but good free verse shouldn't look or sound like simple prose. Partly, the poetic effect is achieved through line breaks, and that's visible at the very beginning of this piece. I use dashes and frequent line breaks to create lots of caesura and enjambment. Strategic line breaks and pauses within lines help to give the syntax of poetry a different movement than what you'd hear in simple prose. And one of the primary strengths of free verse is that it allows a poet to draw attention to or downplay ideas because of their placement within a line. Another effect I used heavily in this piece is a focus on building euphony, or the pleasing use of sound, especially by using lots of alliteration, assonance, and consonants. These terms refer to the strategic repetition of consonant or vowel sounds. For instance, in these lines, I used multiple words with long I sounds. The repetition is satisfying to the ear, but also the use of long vowel sounds tends to suggest more tension or stress than the softer short vowels. So this attention to sound is another way that free verse uses true poetic language. A third effect I used in this poem is a strong meter in a few strategic places. Meter refers to the patterned repetition of stressed and unstressed syllables in a poetic line. Free verse, by definition, lacks a set meter, so the use of metrical patterns within a free verse poem is a good strategy to highlight certain portions and to establish a strong poetic sound. I had been mentally planning this piece for about a week before I started writing it, and I knew that I wanted to repeatedly break into the poem with parentheticals that would allow a little more emotion to come through. I chose to use an iambic meter in those moments. This was intended both to make the parentheticals stand out from the rest of the poem in a more striking way, and also to tie the parentheticals to certain branches of English language poetry. To someone who's read a lot of that, an iambic pattern implies serious, weighty, or important topics. I wasn't concerned about the number of iambs in each of these parentheticals, so there's some variation in how many syllables each one includes. But I intentionally wrote each parenthetical to bring the sound of an iambic meter into strategic places in this free verse piece. I decided on this strategy because the last 4 lines that I wrote were the first 4 that I thought of. These lines came into my head about a week before I wrote this poem, but they were slightly different. They were flipped around and had some different wording in a couple places. As I thought about them over the course of the week, as I rearranged and tried out different word options, they took shape in iambs. This gave me the idea of capturing a few important moments in the poem with iambic structure, and that helped me conceptualize the rest of the poem. And I think this is an important part of the writing process for me. Sometimes it's important for me to recognize when I'm not quite ready to write about something, when the idea needs some time to marinate in my head and take shape a little bit more distinctly. Of course, the challenge in those cases is how to keep mentally chipping away at the composition, rather than getting distracted by daily life and simply forgetting the inspiration. So I'm glad that, in this case, I was able to get a whole poem onto the page. And that created this first draft of something I'm calling The Unfinished, written in about 20 minutes on November 26th, 2022. The unfinished. All of this, is to say nothing of those I never carried. 18 tiny lives. What fool would call them children? They were stripped from my body and his, built in a dish, divided, became blastocysts, but babies only in a dreamer's dream, and died before cryofreezing. 18 seen only beneath magnification. They left their mother's body, never knew my heat again, of whom the world has no record, and even I, who loved their formless forms, never saw their bodies, and cannot say where they now rest. They have no name but longing. They had no life but hope. Thanks for watching this episode of Ars Poetica. If you enjoyed watching poetry happen, please like and subscribe. Then go make some art.